This is Wake Up and Lead, a daily podcast where ambitious young professionals learn to lead themselves. I'm your host, Hampton Dorsch. Today we are talking about faith, specifically how to find true humility. I'll start with a quote by my pastor, Miles Fidel. Humility is not a character trait you can develop. It's a byproduct of spending time with your Heavenly Father. Humility is not a character trait you can develop. It's a byproduct of spending time with your Heavenly Father. Here's why. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. That is I believe it's a C.S. Lewis quote. My favorite book, The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness, which I highly recommend. It's super short. Please read it. It's so good. I read it all the time. Tim Keller references C.S. Lewis there. I'll say that one more time. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. I think a lot of times when we think about humility, we think about the opposite of arrogance or cockiness. And so we go, oh, well, the opposite of that is just saying, oh, I'm so bad. I'm so messed up. And the reality is, whether you're self-consumed and arrogant or self-consumed and insecure, it's still the same thing. It's called pride. And you are thinking about self. And that's why I love the book, The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness, because that's where you find true humility when it's not about you. But here's the thing. You can't do that unless you spend time with God and remind yourself of how big He is and how little you are and how free you are in Him when you just let go, And I'm preaching to myself right now because so often I wake up wired to just think about myself. Like every morning I'm going to wake up and think self. How can I serve me? How can I be more comfortable? How can I build my kingdom? But if you can think of yourself less, like literally forget about yourself, which I think is impossible without spending time with your Heavenly Father who put breath in your lungs. If you can do that, that is where true humility comes from. And so again, it's not a character trait you can develop. Like athletes sometimes might look humble, but deep down on the inside, they're probably thinking about themselves, or people that are tearing themselves down. That's what's called false humility. I learned that too. Google false humility. I'll do an episode on this once, but it'll be pretty convicting because I think a lot of times we, like an example of false humility is deflecting a compliment that you know you deserve. Stop doing that. Just accept the compliment even if you feel uncomfortable and just don't think so much about yourself. So humility is not a character trait you can develop. It's a byproduct of spending time with God. And humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's time for you and me to wake up and lead.